vast opportunities for Spanish business and coincides with the promising economic situation in Spain, which expects a full recovery by next year onwards. Under the Rcep framework, Spanish private sectors could set up their production in any Rcep country to secure preferential market access, tariff reduction, and the harmonization of the rules of origin across the region. Given the pandemic, Spanish companies can also tap ASEAN's increasing role in global value chain by diversifying their supply chains to Southeast Asia to Rcep countries. Therefore, when Rcep enters into force, which is expected in January 2022, coming soon, we do hope that the economic linkages between Spain and ASEAN will become stronger and that it will serve as building blocks for other bilateral free trade agreements between ASEAN member states with the EU. Rcep combined together with these individual FTAs of member states with the EU certainly will further promote more economic flows between the two regions and between our region and Spain. Dear participants, allow me to highlight a bit about Thailand and ASEAN because I wear two hats. I'm the chair of ASEAN Committee in Madrid, but at the same time, I'm also representing my country. So I would like to highlight a bit about Thailand and ASEAN. For your information, the Thai Parliament has ratified the Rcep agreement February this year already. And it is expected that next month, Thailand will be able to submit the ratification to the ASEAN Secretariat. When the agreement comes into force, it is estimated that more than 40,000 export products from Thailand to Rcep countries will benefit from the duty reduction, with 29,000 will to enjoy zero tariff in the first phase. All individuals and businesses working in Thailand's import-export sector, especially those in agricultural produce, food, manufacturing goods, electrical produce, electrical appliance, as well as the biochemical sectors. I think all of these are areas that Spain companies are experts, have expertise, and we already have some investment in Thailand, in our region, in some ASEAN countries. I think Spain could significantly benefit from the agreement that Thailand and Rcep member countries are part of. To end my remarks, on behalf of the ASEAN Committee in Madrid, I wish to express my sincere appreciation to the panelists from both ASEAN and Spanish sides who kindly spare your valuable time with us today. I do also hope that this seminar by itself will serve as a mechanism to promote a better understanding about Rcep, as well as to provide insightful information on how this agreement could benefit Spanish businesses in the future. We have invited today not only ASEAN embassies ambassadors of ASEAN embassies in Spain, and not only Spanish government agencies and Spanish business organizations, but we have also invited panelists from the ASEAN Secretariat and also from the ASEAN Business Advisory Council in Malaysia. ASEAN Secretariat is in Jakarta. The ASEAN Business Advisory Council representative who will speak, who will be our panelist, is in Malaysia. So this seminar, we have participants not just only from Spain, but also from Jakarta, from Malaysia, from overseas. I would hope that you will make use of this seminar to get the most information that may be useful for you from all the panelists. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I wish this seminar a fruitful and successful one. Que tengan un jornada provechosa. Muchas gracias. ขอบคุณค่ะ
Thank you very much, Excellency. And now we are going to start with the first session, Officials' Points of View, which his moderator is Mr. Amadeo Gensana, Director of Economy and Business, Casa Asia, Spain.
Hello to everybody. Good morning to those of you. For those of you who are in Spain, and good afternoon for those of you who are connecting from Asia. It is a pleasure actually to moderate this very interesting session on the official point of view on Rcep. I think that actually Rcep is, I think, is a clear milestone in the relations and integration in Asia. It's the first time in history that actually we have not only the 10 countries in ASEAN, but also countries like Japan, like China, and South Korea, Australia, and New Zealand, countries that actually have had many differences historically are integrated into a single agreement. So that's the reason why I think it's a milestone. And I think it sends actually not only an economic message, but also a geopolitical message saying that actually economic integration is a key for economic growth. On the other side, I think just for Spanish companies, it's very important actually to analyze the effects of the agreement on how they can cope with it. Maybe they should change their strategy. Maybe for them it is better actually to have an investment in the region to take full advantage of the actually the elimination of tariffs, of duties, etc. So that this is something that I would recommend to all of the companies that actually are actually dealing with ASEAN countries or that are willing to do that in the future. So for this first session, we count on the participation of two very distinguished speakers. First of all, is Ana Maria Rosario Diaz Robeñol. She holds a Bachelor of Arts in Economics from University of Santo Tomas, Manila in the Philippines. Also a postgraduate diploma in International Relations and Development from the Institute of Social Studies, The Hague, Netherlands, and also a master's in public management from the Lee Kuan Yew School of Public Policy. And actually, she's the director for market integration at the Market Integration Directorate at the ASEAN Secretariat. We also count on the participation of Ms. Veronica Samper Merino, who is the Deputy Director General of Asia, Non-Europe, and Oceania of the Directorate General of International Trade and Investments at the Ministry of Industry, Trade of Tourism, Spain. She has a bachelor's degree in Spanish Business Management and Administration and an MBA, both from the Commercial University of Deusto of Bilbao. And from year 2008, she's a state economist and trade expert. So without further delay, I would like to pass the floor actually to Ms. Ana Maria Rosario Diaz Robeñol. Please, if you have any question, do not hesitate to put it on the chat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much,
Yes, perfect.
Senyor Sana. Excellency Kun Pantipa Iam Suda Ekahorohit, Ambassador of Thailand to Spain and Chair of the ASEAN Committee in Madrid, Excellencies, ASEAN Ambassadors to Spain, Señorita Veronica Samper Merino, the Deputy General Manager of Asia Europa, Ministry of Industry, Trade and Tourism of Spain, distinguished members of the business community, ladies and gentlemen, hola. Buenos dias to those who are in Madrid and good afternoon to those who are in the ASEAN region. First of all, allow me to thank the ASEAN Committee in Madrid for organizing this event and giving us this opportunity to share with you and the Spanish business community our thoughts and insights on the Regional Comprehensive Partnership Agreement, or what we call Rcep. I am indeed delighted to appear before you this morning or afternoon to speak on Rcep, the latest updates, and its significance to global trade and investment, and what it means to ASEAN-Spain economic relations. We are really honored to contribute to your organization's efforts to create awareness on the opportunities accruing from Rcep, particularly to stakeholders outside of the Rcep region. I actually had some slides prepared which cover in greater details what is Rcep, what it is all about, and its possible significance to both ASEAN and Spain. Given, however, that I have been allocated only a few minutes for my presentation, I thought that I would just abandon my presentation and just go straight away to the main points and the key messages I would leave, or I would like to leave with you today Not to worry though, because we will still be sharing our slides to everyone participating in this event. So allow me to go straight to the three messages I wish to convey. First is on the signing of the Rcep agreement. The signing of the Rcep agreement in November 2020 could be considered as ASEAN's most significant achievement to date. Not only because ASEAN was able to demonstrate its capability to lead and drive negotiations for a trade deal, notwithstanding the challenges, but more importantly, ASEAN was able to deliver this mega undertaking after 8 long years of intensive and tedious negotiations among participating countries with divergent levels of development and national interests. RCEP negotiations could not have been concluded and signed at the most opportune time. That is when the world was grappling with the COVID-19 global pandemic, which brought about a health and economic crisis
Excuse me,
like no other.
Miss Anna, excuse me. I am sharing your presentation. Do you want to do by yourself, or I can pass if you want?
No, actually, I won't be going through each and every slide. So I'm not sure whether it would be helpful. Maybe we can just share it with.
Yes, I will share it.
Yeah,
Just
share it in the chat box.
I will share it, but you tell me next, okay?
No, it's okay. I won't be doing it per slide. So I won't be
Okay,
doing
okay,
it as
okay.
I don't have a next slide.
Okay, you will do it
Please.
by yourself. Okay, yes.
Okay,
Yes,
thanks.
sorry, thank you.
So as I was saying, the RCEP negotiations could not have been concluded and signed at the most opportune time, given that it was done at the time when the world was grappling with the COVID-19 global pandemic. RCEP is significant to ASEAN because it was also able to show that it could be a platform for countries with geopolitical dynamics to come together and forge a free trade agreement among them. Originally, the objective of ASEAN in coming up with RCEP is only to consolidate the ASEAN plus one FTAs that ASEAN has with China, Japan, Korea, with India, and an FTA with both Australia and New Zealand. But as a result of this consolidation, RCEP actually created a de facto FTA among RCEP participating countries that didn't have prior FTAs between them. And we're referring to basically to Japan and Korea and China and Japan. We know that what we call the CJK process, China, Japan, Korea process has been very challenging to the three of them. And yet under RCEP, they were able to come up with an FTA between them. So prior to the COVID-19 global pandemic, ASEAN was already growing at an average of 4.8% from 2010 to 2019, making the region one of the fastest growing regions in the world. ASEAN's economic growth could be attributed not only to its economic integration efforts that led to the establishment of the ASEAN Economic Community in 2015, but also to the free trade agreements which it has with its major trading partners that I mentioned just now. RCEP's market access outcomes, its streamlined rules and disciplines, particularly in areas not previously covered in any of the ASEAN plus one FTAs, or even in the AEC, and I am referring to significant chapters in the areas of the likes of intellectual property, electronic commerce, competition, government procurement. These are areas that are not even in the ASEAN Economic Community Blueprint, as well as the opening up of market and employment opportunities to businesses and people in the region, as it facilitates the expansion of regional trade and investment. ASEAN becomes more attractive as a destination for foreign direct investments, particularly for those engaged in global value chains, as locating in ASEAN comes with it access to the world's biggest markets. Clearly, Rcep is a manifestation of the region's support to a rules-based multilateral system, multilateral trading system, but perhaps the most important of all at this juncture is that Rcep is the region's contribution to post-pandemic COVID-19 recovery efforts. Second, Rcep should be expected to boost global foreign direct investments. It is noteworthy to highlight that the Rcep investment chapter includes a straightforward MFN treatment clause, which is a first for ASEAN, as this provision is not in any of the ASEAN Plus One FTAs. It also has commitments on prohibition of performance requirements that goes beyond multilateral obligations under the WTO trade-related investment measures or TRIMS agreement, which is more than what is in the ACIA or the ASEAN Comprehensive Investment Agreement, or even the ASEAN-Japan Comprehensive Economic Partnership Agreement. Rcep also includes a two-annex negative list for scheduling non-conforming measures, making Rcep the first ever agreement where ASEAN has completed a two-annex negative list, and also a ratchet mechanism that addresses liberalization, which is another first for ASEAN. According to a report done by UNCTAD, Rcep, which constitutes about 15% of global FDI stock and more than 33% of global FDI flows in 2020, is expected to provide an opportunity for ASEAN and its partners to further boost investment and enhance the development of the global value chain in the region. In addition, Rcep participating countries already account for about 40% of investments in ASEAN, and 24% of these are from the non-ASEAN countries in Rcep. Rcep therefore opens up opportunities for greater connectivity to investment, production, and inter-firm and maybe also inter-industry transactions in ASEAN, as well as between ASEAN and the non-ASEAN Rcep members. So while Spain is not an Rcep participating country, Rcep could actually boost ASEAN-Spain bilateral and investment relations. Spain is ASEAN's 22nd largest partner and accounts for around 4.7% of the total ASEAN-EU trade. As mentioned earlier, Rcep enhances ASEAN's attractiveness as a destination site for trade and investment, even if the region is reeling from the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. Rcep opens up opportunities for Spain to increase trade and investment, and notwithstanding the current levels, there is scope and potential towards this end. Among the slides that we have prepared is ASEAN's merchandise trade with Spain, which somehow indicate that there are indeed prospects for Spain to consider ASEAN as its manufacturing base, particularly for machineries, pharmaceutical products, leather goods, among others. As mentioned earlier by Her Excellency the Ambassador of Thailand, the Rcep agreement is targeted to enter into force on 1 January 2022. To achieve this, we need at least 6 ASEAN member states and 3 non-ASEAN signatory states to ratify the Rcep agreement. And the agreement will enter into force 60 days after the 9th signatory state of the 6 ASEAN member states and 3 non-ASEAN signatories deposit their instruments of ratification, approval, or acceptance with the Secretary General of ASEAN. To date, the instruments of ratification of Singapore, China, and Japan have been circulated to all signatory states. We're actually hoping to get most of the instruments of ratification by the time that the ASEAN heads of government meet sometime late in October to ensure that the agreement actually enters into force as we have targeted in January 2022. It should be pointed out as well that Rcep is the only agreement in ASEAN that has an open accession clause, which means interested economies can accede into the Rcep agreement. And as the agreement provides, it can be done 180 days from the date of its entry into force. While a number of economies have actually signified their interest to join Rcep, to date, Hong Kong, China, which also has a bilateral FTA with ASEAN, and Bangladesh have actually expressed in a more formal way its interest to join Rcep when the right time comes. And they would be covered by the accession provision of the Rcep agreement. India, as an original Rcep participating country, is an exception to the Rcep accession provisions, which means India can join Rcep anytime if it so wishes. Suffice to say that despite India's absence from Rcep, which we actually hope is temporary, the benefits accruing from Rcep are still significant to bring about market and employment opportunities, attract investments, and generate real and actual welfare gains, not only for the regional economy, but for the global economy as well. With that said, let me end by saying, damos la bienvenida a las empresas españolas a la ASEAN para que disfruten de los beneficios de Rcep. Muchas gracias y buenos días.
Well, thank you very much, Ms. Ana Robeniol. And now I'd like to pass the floor to Ms. Veronica Samper. Veronica, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Amadeo. Good morning, good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to thank you, the Chamber of Madrid, Asian Committee, and of course the ambassadors for organizing this event. And of course, I want to thank you, my colleague, Ms. Ana Robeniol, particularly for the impressive presentation and above all for the last message, for the welcome to ASEAN, to our business community. So first of all, I would like to underline the relevance of the ASEAN region. ASEAN represents a market of nearly 670 million inhabitants, with a growing and sustained increase in GDP per capita and quality of life in all the countries in the last 20 years. ASEAN stands as the 5th largest economic bloc in the world, just behind the US, the EU, China, and Japan, with a very significant infrastructure, energy, water, and urbanization plans, and deeply integrated into global value chain. It's true that the pandemic has affected all the world, but the predictions for recovery from COVID-19 in 2021 for ASEAN are very positive. A 4.5% growth according to the IMF, slightly lower than its pre-crisis COVID figures. And as Ms. Ana has said, the regional comprehensive economic partnership will mean a bigger regional integration and will give enormous advantages to ASEAN. In this context, apart from the fact that Spain and Philippines have a common past, our presence in the region is quite recent and limited. It's true that there is a large number of Spanish construction companies, engineering, technology companies that have carried out quite a significant number of projects in the last 2 decades in the ASEAN region. This positive trend is expected to continue as the infrastructure endowment of ASEAN countries continues to expand. The growing globalization of the Spanish economy and the deeper integration of the ASEAN markets into global value chains should lead in the future to deeper the bilateral economic and trade ties with the ASEAN economies. Let's give some figures to put into context our relations. Numbers are not very impressive, but the trend has been very good and the potential is huge. Spain exported 3.8 billion euros to the ASEAN region in 2019 and imported 9.5 billion euros from ASEAN member countries. I'm using 2019 figures, because 2020 figures are affected by the pandemic and doesn't reflect the reality of the trend or the evolution of our trade. We have maintained during the last years a chronic deficit with the ASEAN countries, but there is differences with countries. Indeed, 40% of these trade imbalances is due to imports originating in Vietnam, followed by relevance by Indonesia. And Spain, for example, has a commercial surplus with Singapore and the Philippines. Given the disparities among the members countries in terms of productive structure in ASEAN, there is a broad variability on the bilateral import-export scheme among them. Spain export to ASEAN machinery and mechanical appliances, electrical, material and equipment. We have important operations. Also, of course, there are one-off operation in aircrafts, and also important exports on pharmaceutical and food products. We import from ASEAN electrical appliances and equipment, oils, mainly palm oil, machinery and mechanical appliances, and everything related to clothing, rubber, and footwear. In the case of investment, I think here the potential is even bigger, and probably the regional comprehensive economic partnership, the entering into force of this regional integration will offer opportunities on the investment side. ASEAN is a net issuer of capital to Spain. The stock of ASEAN investment in Spain in 2019, latest consolidated data, reached 7.1 billion euros. Outstanding sectors are real estate activities, accommodation, and financial services. Spanish investment in ASEAN, the stock of investment in 2019 amounted 2.9 billions, and main sectors are insurance services and everything related to industries like metallurgies, iron and steel product, electrical equipment, among others. So we certainly see opportunities for Spanish companies in investing in the ASEAN area. In this context, I would like to point out the fact that we are extremely proud of our companies, which are considered an international benchmark for their capacity and know-how in a wide variety of sectors. These areas include the construction of all sorts of infrastructure, railways, roads, tourism facilities, the energy sector, water and waste management, the pharmaceutical industry, and the service sector, among others. Spanish companies stand out for their highly customized, innovative, and quality projects, both in terms of design, construction, and management. This specialization enables them to be present in the ASEAN region, overcoming the advantages in terms of cost and proximity that companies for other countries enjoys. The Rcep underlines the importance of East and Southeast Asia as the core of economic growth and advocates of trade liberalization. This seminar is very ambitious and interesting because certainly it's very difficult to analyze the overall impact of such a complex regional agreement like this. Of course, from Spain and from Europe's point of view, we can expect some kind of a trade deviation, but it's also true that regional integration is a step toward multilateralism, facilitating and promoting trade between commercial blocs, making more efficient global value chain, and attracting foreign direct investment and creating an environment for business. In this context, we are expecting certainly benefits from our side. I will now conclude and give the floor to the rest of the speakers, but first allow me to make the Deputy Directorate General for Asia and the Secretariat of State for Trade fully available to assist you in any possible way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Veronica, I don't know whether actually there's any question from the floor. Actually, we're running actually a little bit late. So if there's any question, please let us know. No, then I would like to ask one very quick question to Ana Romaniol, which is actually about the role of the EU in ASEAN. If I'm not mistaken, actually in year 2020, actually both ASEAN and the EU signed this strategic partnership. Do you think that the EU is trying to upgrade actually their performance in this situation in ASEAN countries?
Thank you for your question. Indeed, EU's partnership with ASEAN has been elevated to a more strategic level. EU is not only an important partner in terms of, it covers a comprehensive range of a partnership, political, especially in economic. It is one of the 5 largest trading partners in ASEAN. It is also one of the highest source of investments in ASEAN. So I could only comment on the economic part of the issue, of EU's relationship with ASEAN. If you would note, although EU has a free trade agreement with Singapore and Vietnam, there are also ongoing efforts to have these FTAs with several other countries, but really, to be honest, engaging the EU has been very challenging, especially for a region like ASEAN, where we have where we have members of different levels of development. We have been trying for the last how many years to really engage EU for an FTA. The engagement with the EU has even precedes the Rcep agreement. But then because of these challenges, also given the fact that EU is a customs union with a high level of expectation for each bilateral for its FTAs, it has been very difficult and challenging, but we continue to engage. In fact, at the last ministerial meeting, it was the first time again after how many years that the EU Trade Commissioner has met with the ASEAN economic ministers, and we also had an event we call the ASEAN EU Investment Summit. Business Summit or something like that, which really underscores the importance of EU to the region. While having an FTA between ASEAN and EU is very hard, we continue to engage. EU is not only a trading partner, but EU is also a development partner, we should say, and they continue to provide technical assistance and capacity building to ensure that ASEAN somehow lives up to or comes closer to that level of ambition that EU has for its strategic partnership. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I think we are running out of time for the session. And
Amadeo, can I
yes, Veronica, please.
Something to that?
Sure.
Yes,
of course.
Want, of course, to give importance to this strategic partnership that the European Union signed with ASEAN in the 1st December 2020, and say that of course the EU cannot be in another way. We have a very active trade agenda in Asia. We have trade agreements with Korea, with Japan, with Vietnam and Singapore, and we are under negotiation with Australia, New Zealand and Indonesia. It's true that bilateral agreements take more time, but it's also true that it allowed the EU to reach more comprehensive and rigorous agreement. And in this context, Spain is a strong supporter of trade and investment agreement between the EU and ASEAN economies and any kind of a strategic partnership. And we hope to see significant progress in this area soon.
Thank you very much, Veronica. And I think we will end up this session. And I would like to pass the floor to the moderator of the next session, Mr. Felipe Canet, who's president of the Spain ASEAN Business Association. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Amadeo. And now we are going to start with the session 2. We are going to change the table. Just wait a minute, and we are going to prepare in 1 minute. Okay, thank you very much. Welcome to this session number 2, Business Points of View. And now let me introduce you, its moderator, Mr. Felipe Canet, Vice President, Spain ASEAN Business Association.
Good morning to all of you, or good afternoon to those who are connecting from Asian countries. Dr. Munir is the chairman of Asian Business Advisory Council of Malaysia, Qatar Airways Research and Advocacy, as well as the president of the Asian Business Club. Dr. Munir obtained the Bachelor in Science and PhD in International Relations from the London School of Economics and Political Science, and he has an extensive experience in the Malaysian corporate world. I don't want to take more time, so I will allow Mr. Dr. Munir to start his part.
Buenos dias to friends in Spain, and good afternoon to my friends in the region, in ASEAN. I hope you can hear me. You've been hearing a lot of pluses about RCEP and ASEAN, and the pluses are very true, very real. But I think we should also look at some dynamism beyond the current pluses, which makes it even a better plus. At the same time, also at some minuses, some of the sort of risks and things which have not happened. Now, the big plus, of course, is it is the largest FTA in the world. RCEP is 1/3 of almost everything. Population, 29 trillion, GDP, which is 30% of global output, 28% of global trade, and it is certainly a huge free trade area. And from this huge free trade area, there is potential to grow not only within the free trade area, but also beyond it. So let's look first at within it. Within it, of course, this is a market where tariffs are coming down, will be brought down. At the moment, the average tariff rate in RCEP is about 5.6%. And there is going to be a phasing down period. It will be 0 at the end of that phasing down period. but it is still average of 5.6%. When it becomes zero, it's going to be a bonanza for the SMEs, particularly. Now, at the moment, I mean, there is also the certificate of origin, which is going to be the driver of this bringing down of tariffs, because anything produced in the region will be entitled to the lower tariffs, okay? And therefore, cumulatively, it is going to be a plus. You produce in a part of the laser part, let's say in Thailand, let's say in Japan, and you complete it in Korea, and therefore it's got an Rcep 3 parts in terms of tariffs. So that is a huge plus. The downside of this is at the moment, the determination of whether it was of this certificate of origin will be bureaucratically done. It's not a self-certification. We in business would like to see self-certification, so that you say it's produced in Japan and Korea, and you can come to Malaysia, then well and good. You just give the documents. You don't have to be checked again and you know, sort of have customs problems or not. So there should be a movement towards self-certification to make this very seamless. Now, the other side of it is, of course, there's a lot of competition for the Rcep market, and in particular, the ASEAN market, which is growing. And China, which has already ratified Rcep, is looking very, very closely at the ASEAN market, even more than now, okay? And what China is doing a lot, it already has identified products that can penetrate ASEAN markets more easily as a result of Rcep, right down to the swimsuit. It's identified products in a very detailed fashion. And the Chinese chambers of commerce and industry across the region are really sort of working together. And the Chinese provincial governments in Shandong or Yunnan are planning on hitting this Rcep market, and in particular, ASEAN market. Even the Japanese, who are very slow at moving when it comes to ratification, have ratified. And they have calculated that Rcep would add 0.5% to their GDP once everything is in place. So there's a lot of keenness in it. And as you have been told, Singapore and Thailand have also ratified, and the full coming into force of Rcep will happen. I'm not as sanguine about it as my colleague at the ASEAN Secretariat about you know, the ratifications coming through, and ASEAN ratifications plus the majority of the 5 non-ASEAN countries coming through in 2021 December, right? Or as the next ASEAN summit. What I feel happening is probably it might happen towards the end of 2022, you know, rather than being in force at the start of 2022. So that is you know, kind of time difference that would happen. But the most important thing which has not been said about Rcep, not more important than the others, but one critical thing which has not been said about Rcep is you can plan your exports in the region, including hitting China when it becomes the growth engine of the world, from outside the region, right? And therefore, there is less political and regulatory risk from countries outside China going into China, or from China into China. So the less political and regulatory risk is a boost for ASEAN economies in the Rcep environment. Now, I mentioned dynamism, and I have here the situation that has been mentioned. We have Rcep, the Rcep 15. We have the 29 trillion output, and we have the member states of ASEAN. but we also have what was mentioned, the CPTPP. Now, the CPTPP comprises 11 states, okay, of whom 4 are in ASEAN, which is Brunei, Malaysia, Singapore, and Vietnam, of whom 3 are in Rcep, apart from the 4, which is Japan, Australia, and New Zealand. Now, there are 4 countries in CPTPP which are not in Rcep. We're talking about Chile, Peru, Canada, and Mexico. Now, those in Rcep who are members also of CPTPP, you will have an opportunity to use this base to export, particularly to big markets like Canada and Mexico and Peru and Chile, not to forget Chile. So there is a CPTPP link to Rcep, given the members of the Rcep who are members of the CPTPP. Of course, there's also the US, which, you know, not in this whole mix. There's also the USMCA, which is the United States, Mexico, Canada Agreement. Now, this is a 26 trillion area. And therefore, when you get Canada and Mexico market from that 26 trillion area, that potential of USMCA comes to Rcep plus CPTPP as well. Now, if the US were to join CPTPP, the dynamic connectivities between Rcep and CPTPP will be realized. If not, never mind, you still have Canada and Mexico in there. So there is a dynamism in the development. And of course, there has been indications from other countries which are not members of CPTPP, who are members of Rcep, wanting to join CPTPP. China, for example, has stated so, but it's got problems with Australia. And to join the CPTPP, you need unanimous approval of the existing members. Unlike with Rcep, you know, you can apply to join. But the whole region is in a dynamic situation. So whilst we talk about Rcep alone, that's huge. Yes, 1/3 of everything. There is also the CPTPP dimension to think about, and as you plan whatever businesses you want to go into. So it's not just Rcep; it would be Rcep plus CPTPP, and so this is a fantastic story, you know, to follow. Now, what are the kinds of products now? I mean, I don't want to use all of my 10 minutes, okay? But finally, you know, what are the kinds of products or services that are attractive for you to invest in or to trade into this Rcep region, and in particular, of course, ASEAN? I think what's not been mentioned so far is the sustainability issue. We were talking about the technologies in a sustainable environment that Spain may have to introduce to the ASEAN and Rcep region so as to achieve net zero. That's one area. I think infrastructure was mentioned. Certainly, infrastructure like non-coal-fired, you know, infrastructure would be very good to have. If you have infrastructure like wind, hydrogen infrastructure to introduce that can be used in the Rcep ASEAN region, that would be a great boost for your investments and for your future in the Rcep region. Now, one thing, healthcare. We all are, you know, very concerned about healthcare now more than ever before. It's never remembered sometimes that health is a sustainable product. It's a sustainable service. And healthcare is going to be so important in the region as it is elsewhere, that you want to look at the pharmaceutical industry, particularly. We want to look and see what kinds of products might be useful. For example, I'll just give you an example, a CPAS. For example, let's say you have an antibodies blood testing product. So that quite apart from vaccines, a vaccine pass, some countries may also require a CPAS, i.e. you have immunities even after vaccination or many months after vaccination, or you have immunities such that you do not need to have booster vaccinations. So if you have a product that can measure very, very scientifically, the antibodies you have against COVID, then you got take off, in terms of the pharmaceutical industry and the healthcare industry. Now, finally, I haven't got much time. It's just everything is gone online, as you know, and therefore if you got anything digital to introduce, particularly in the financial services sector, particularly in terms of infrastructure, again, connectivity, infrastructure, you will be most welcome, and the chances of actually expanding in the region will be great. So I have taken more than 10 minutes. I apologize, but I hope I've covered the thing in 3 blocks effectively enough. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Munir, for your views. Very interesting your view on Rcep as a gate to entry to China from within the Asian region, and also to CPTPP countries. I think we can develop that later. Now I will introduce our second member of the panel, His Excellency Ambassador Philippe Jean-Rillier. Is the ambassador of the Philippines in Spain, also representative to the United Nations World Tourism Organization. He's been an ambassador in a huge range of countries in Europe and other parts of the world. Well, I allow Mr. Lullier to
speak. Good morning, good afternoon to everyone. I am grateful to La Cámara Madrid and the ASEAN Committee in Madrid for arrangement made for this forum today. Today is a very rare occasion for I will speak my mind not as a diplomat, but as a businessman. Some of you may not know that before becoming an ambassador, I was a chairman of my own finance company. You have already heard how our Rcep expert talk about this trade agreement history, vision, and technicalities. So for the next 10 minutes, I will put on my businessman's thinking cap and speak to the audience of one businessman to another. First, Rcep law market of origin threshold and the certificate of origin products when 40% of the product is from a member market makes ASEAN economy ideal location for European assembly and manufacturing hubs. This is, I find, very, very important, by the way. ASEAN is currently the world's 3rd largest workforce. If I was a European manufacturer, I've been saying this for the past postings where I was posted, I could put up a facility in an ASEAN Rcep member to take advantage of the lower capital expense costs, lower labor, vast availability of young, healthy workers. In the Philippines, we are averaging about 23-year-old, coupled with highly talented managers. Some European companies are already doing this, and I strongly believe there could be a lot more. Second, Rcep tariff rules encourage Rcep members to source from within the region, ensuring selling within the region will be much easier. As a result, the relationship between the members' markets will no doubt strengthen trading activities at both the economies. It also means that the manufacturer can be a lot more cost efficient in sourcing the raw materials or components parts of a company's product. ASEAN countries, and pardon me for promoting my own country, the Philippines, is strategically, logically well-positioned for product distribution and transshipment. Within ASEAN, as well as to the other Rcep members, such as Australia, Japan, Korea, and China, with hundreds of airports and seaports, international and domestic, of varying size to meet the demand of any company. European companies would be making an underestimation of strategic proportions if they do not at least study the possibility of doing in the future. If your product stayed ASEAN, you're assessing a market of over 620 million consumer households. If your products are meant for transshipment to all Rcep members, we're talking about a market of 2.2 billion people. Imagine the savings and profit margins of manufacturing companies and how these margins can translate to the growth of employment numbers, corporate productivity, and national GDP growth. Domestic Spanish brands could gain market share in Rcep member economies, where previously only multinational giants could dare to do. The Rcep could also be a game changer for SMEs and startups who could use the single set of rules which cover cross-border investment, e-commerce, and some elements of intellectual properties. Now, it won't only be about who you are or who you know, as the case may be, when you're a new kid on the block and have relatively small capital to play with. Rcep could help open market access and facilities the movement of goods and services in ASEAN home to $3 trillion. Not only will trade be easier, but the compliance costs are reduced well. This helps open doors for investors and businesses while creating much inclusive trade potential and opportunity for the smaller guys to become part of the regional value chain. With economies hit by the COVID-19 pandemic, the Rcep could be a lighthouse of hope and opportunities within our group. As markets are gently opened and instinct for a more protectionist approach and overcome. Those who are brave, I repeat, those who are brave enough to set out to sea again could reap enormous rewards. Now, as a businessman, I would like to ask a question. Is there a central Rcep help desk in existence which could help businesses, people navigate the benefit and incentive available? I'm sure that you will agree with me that in the practical terms, ordinary business people who have strong ideas and decent experiences would still need a significant amount of guidance to make Rcep benefit work for them without having to pay an arm and a leg for legal advice. If we can do that for a potential investor, I think we'll be seeing more business handshakes or elbow taps as it is now post-COVID. As we say in the Philippines, mabuhay and maraming salamat. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for your view, not only as ambassador, but also as a businessman. Thank you. Well, now I will introduce Mr. Antonio Bonet. Mr. Antonio Bonet is a founder and now the president of the Spanish Exporters and Investors Club. He has a vast experience in the business world. He has a master's degree in business administration by the University of Seville and a master's in economy and finance by the MIT of Massachusetts. He is the representative of all our exporters here. So I will let him explain and introduce us to his views on the opportunities and challenges of Rcep.
Well, thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Well, ambassadors, authorities here in Spain and in Asean countries, businessmen. First of all, I think that it has been a very good idea to organize this event. I mean, Rcep is going to be one of the major players in the economy in the world. And it's good that we start talking about it, and it's good that we start seeing what's going to happen, what challenges and what opportunities will we have. No? How can I pass okay, please. Well, I'm going to talk about 4 things, but most of them have already been said, and have already been explained. So I will go quickly through most of it and concentrate on the main messages that I think that as businessmen, we should think. No? Please, next. Well, Rcep, 15 countries signed last year, still pending ratification, largest free trade area in the world. We all know that, it has already been said. No? Next, please. With the objective of establishing a modern economic partnership, facilitate trade and finance, and liberalize economies. Now, what is it that Rcep is going to make? What is going to happen? What is certain, I think that everybody agrees, is that Rcep growth, economic growth in Rcep countries will increase. It is already quite big, but it will increase even more. Why? Because Rcep will boost intra-trade among the 15 countries, and it will boost investments among the countries. And that's the recipe for growth. First. Second, there's going to be trade diversion. Now, what does it mean? It means that some companies that are exporting to Rcep countries from outside the region, from Spain or from Germany or from the US, will have higher challenges, more difficulties to export there. Why? Because they are subject to custom duties, while member countries of Rcep are not going to have custom duties among themselves. So that is an advantage for countries within the region. So where does this lead to? It leads to the need to invest. Companies, we have to invest there if we want to compete with our friends of Philippines, Indonesia, China, everywhere in the region. Otherwise, they will have a competitive advantage over our companies. Next. Please, next. So it has been said, no, but it's good to outline. No? Well, I mean, 30% of global GDP. Could you go to the previous one, please? Yes, okay. Rcep is not simply a trade agreement, a traditional free trade area. In this case, it's going to cover 92% of industrial products over 20 years. There's going to be harmonization of rules of origin, but there's many more things. I mean, the chapters about services, about intellectual property, about public contracting, that's very important for Spanish companies. And something very important also is the first time that China takes part in a large bilateral, I mean, not multilateral free trade area. And it's the first time that China signs something similar to this with Korea and with Japan, which are economic powerhouses. No? Next, please. I have already mentioned that. Next, please. What's the situation? Well, Europe exports about 20% of total extra EU exports go to Rcep countries and 31% of imports. And is basically machinery, equipment, automotive pieces and cars and things like that. No? In the case of Spain, our trade with, next please. our trade with Rcep is much less than what it could be or what it should be if we compare ourselves with the with the European Union. It's only 6% of total exports. So we export much less. Now, this new trade agreement opens a window of opportunities for Spanish companies if they invest there. Next, please. There is already investments, there are, but mainly in China, Spanish investment, China, Australia, and Singapore, but not so much in the rest of the countries, especially in Asean, which is one among the top regions in the world in terms of growth and potential. Now, it's not simple because selecting one country might, companies are not so big to say, okay, I'll invest everywhere. No, we normally select one country, 2 countries maximum. So where? And they are very diverse and they have different regulations and there's a different business environment and there's a different local market. So it's not simple to decide. No? Please, next. So what are the cons? I mean, the difficulties. Distance, I mean, it's far away from here. We all know that. As I mentioned, very diverse regulatory environment. If you look at the World Bank ease of doing business, I mean, that statistics, that the information that is published every year, you can see that among the 15 countries, I mean, there are some of them very, very low in the ranking, and some of them in very high positions in the ranking. So very diverse, very heterogeneous. It's not only language, but culture, but business environment, so a lot. And then there is what I mentioned before. I mean, there's going to be trade deviation. I mean, there's going to be exports that are currently being made from Europe to these countries that will not be made in the future, or there will be less. No? Why? Because it's the only way, it will be the best way to do business there. So we have to be present, and we have to be present producing. Local partners will make it much more simple. So it's very important to select well a local partner. And it means that if you invest in one of the countries, because of Rcep, that company will have the possibility to sell in the rest of the countries of the region, which is a very significant advantage. Next, please. Next. Next. Okay, so to conclude, investment in the region is key to growth. Local presence is needed, but there's also some caveats. I mean, what's going to happen in the future? Is it really going to be a free trade area with so many countries, so diverse, with different political and economic systems? Will it last, or will it happen as it has happened in many other free trade areas, that at the very end, okay, they do offer some advantages, some preferences, but they don't go further in the integration process, which is the case actually of ASEAN countries. I mean, there is trade facilitation, there is ease of doing business trade transactions, but not much more than that. Will it go further or not? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Antonio. I think it's very interesting, your view of Rcep as a challenge also. It's not only opportunities, it's also a challenge, because at the end we are going to compete with companies that are already established there. But you already gave a very clear recipe, which is in line with what Ambassador said. We need to be there. We need to have direct investment in the region. Well, I don't know if we have any questions from participants. I would like to make a question, I think, for all of you, because I think basically all of you mentioned, especially Dr. Munir and Ambassador, you mentioned also Rcep as a competition, also internal. There is an internal competition among countries also, because this will give the opportunity to create hubs for manufacturing, for providing different services, And Dr. Munir mentioned China as a potential winner, no, for this agreement. I would like to ask you, how do you think there could be winners and losers, or countries who doesn't win so much? And how well positioned are different countries in the region?
Well, if I may, I did not exactly say that China will be the winner, but I'm saying China is positioning itself to take great advantage, and it sees the need also to become a member of the CPTPP. And so it is quite normal, a state taking strategic moves, to it. So Japan is not going to be lying down, and doing nothing as China moves. So I think the thing about China is, of course, its size, the way it can appeal. And also, don't forget, you have the overseas Chinese dimension. And a lot of meetings take place between China and the Chinese chambers of commerce in many ASEAN countries. And many trade deals are made, many investments are made. So China will certainly, be in there for a bit. At the same time, China is also the engine of growth for the other countries to target. Okay, and if Spain and Europe, get involved, Southeast Asia will not be overwhelmed by China, to the extent that there will be values of transparency, legalities, values of disclosure that can be used, even in a BRI. If you were involved in a BRI project with China involved, with AIIB involved, and you can introduce into that project many of the standards of transparency and disclosure for which China has been criticized, which China is saying that it is trying to address. Well, then you'll be there to make them address it. So it's going to be a very good opportunity for everyone, the lawyers, financiers, and the values of an ecosystem, but not talking to people about values from afar, but doing it on the ground in extracting economic advantage and business advantage by using the values. Thank you.
Just very quickly, I don't think that we can speak about winners or losers. Everybody will win. If you are in a region, if you are in a country, if you are in an area that will grow more than what it has been growing in the past, that is good for everybody. Provided that you don't, you play with the rules and you play the game. Now, if we're going to talk about who could win a little bit more, it's difficult to say, but I think that ASEAN countries are the ones that will win more. Why? Because we are currently seeing a transformation of global value chains. Now, that means that those countries that are well positioned to attract manufacturing, to sell those products within the region, which is the case of Rcep, they will win. And ASEAN countries will be in a position to manufacture Chinese products and sell them into China without tariffs. So that is a win situation. But as I said, everybody will win. And then there's another thing. We have to speak about companies, because in many cases, you find one company producing, textiles, shoes, whatever, that is going extremely well. And then next door, there's another company, same sector, that is not doing very well. So it's companies that they have to play with the game, they have to invest, they have to carry out strategies using the environment, the economic environment and regulatory environment that it's at their disposal. Thank you.
I agree that everybody will win, and it's a good point that you said, Mr. Bonnet, about this is an opportunity that all the ASEAN can sell also to China. In my case, in the Philippines, I have been trying to promote with all my other postings, especially right now in Spain, how Spain should wake up sorry to use the word, I said wake up, and to really try to think about the Philippines. See, we have forgotten each other for some time. So right now, I have noticed that a lot of companies are seeing me in the embassies right now and talking about opportunities. But we're talking at the ASEAN, everybody's a winner. I agree with that. That's a very good line that I think so all of us ASEAN should think of that really, because for us to compete one another, it is part of it, but let's try to do better than the other people. That's what I could say. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much. I don't know if there is any question. If there is not, I will allow the next panel, which is focused on education, to start. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. And now we are going to start the session number 3, academic points of view. Just 1 minute to change the panelists and their signs. Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Now we are going to start session number 3. Let me introduce you, its moderator, Mr. Bayu Harin from the Embassy of Indonesia to Spain. Thank you.
Check. Distinguished ambassadors, ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Thank you so much for investing your time with us on Tuesday morning. My name is Bayu Harin. I am Charles Diversion of the Indonesian Embassy in Madrid, and today it's an honor for me to serve as a moderator for this panel. Today we already hear about the main explanation about Rcep, and in my session we have an interesting topic, Rcep's future and challenges, where we'll be talking about the opportunity and challenges faced by this agreement, not only for ASEAN, but also for European Union in general and Spain in particular. We will have a big opportunity to hear opinions and arguments from our honorable panelists to share their views in terms of academic point of view. Our goal today is that whatever you role in commercial world, that you will understand a big picture of one of ASEAN milestone in the global economic world. It is our hope that once you leave this room, you will return home with a new idea, a fresh perspective, a new strategy, and probably a new business plan to be more successful in your business using Rcep as one of tools to connect and expand your business with ASEAN countries and other Rcep member countries. So here's the format to give you an idea of what to expect. First, we'll take a few moments for each of the panelists to briefly tell about their point of view on the Rcep future and challenges. And then the second half of our time today, we'll open up with the floor with some ASEAN questions to what our panelists will explain. Today we have 3 honorable panelists. First, I would like to introduce to you His Excellency Akmal bin Sheikh Mustafa, the Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Malaysia to the Kingdom of Spain. He joined Foreign Ministry in 1996 and has been posted in many Malaysian diplomatic missions, such as Santiago, Chile, Bucharest, Romania, Manila, the Philippines, and now as Ambassador in Madrid. He holds BA in International Relations from University Malaya, Magister Social Science in Strategic Analysis and International Security from National University of Malaysia, and Diploma in Public Administration from National Institute of Public Administrations. His Excellency, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Bayu, for the kind introduction. Excellencies, distinguished participants. I will go straight to the point about future and challenges, the main topic of our session today. Firstly, the main challenge that we need to face in the immediate future is how to mitigate the adverse economic impact caused by the pandemic. Economic recovery across the region remains fragile as gradual reopening in ASEAN member states are disrupted by the rise of new variants. ASEAN GDP contracted by 3.3% in 2020, with the transport and tourism sectors particularly hit due to the mobility and cross-border travel restrictions. This is where I believe the provisions in Rcep will help enable the signatories to bounce back their economic growth more expeditiously and in a sustainable manner. The full implementation of Rcep undoubtedly will help accelerate the positive impact on the output of the region. It promotes closer economic ties between ASEAN and its dialogue partners. And over time, it will deepen economic integration among the signatories. In the context of ASEAN, the economy in the region is picking up. GDP is expected to reach 4.0% this year and 5.2% in 2022. In order to reap the benefits of Rcep, the first hurdle that we need to overcome is the ratification by the signatories domestically. As we know, the COVID-19 resurgence has complicated these efforts as some countries diverting legislative attention to more pressing issues. However, due to pro-trade policy and projected benefit from increased investment opportunities under Rcep, we can anticipate the ratification to gain traction soon. Thus, the agreement may come into force in 2020. In Rcep, it requires 6 ASEAN member countries out of 10 to ratify, and 3 out of 5 non-ASEAN members to ratify, after which the agreement will be fully implemented after 60 days. The timely implementation of Rcep is a key building block to the post-pandemic recovery that will expand business opportunities in the region. And in the previous session, our panelists have also discussed about the positioning and participating by all Rcep signatories in this process. You know, as we're all aware that another challenge, Rcep consists of diverse countries. In terms of development level and economic growth, some are highly advanced, while others are just beginning to industrialize. In order to fully benefit from the agreement, all signatories must be able to participate and position themselves in global value chains. Toward this end, some countries need to undertake structural transformation and infrastructure development in the following areas. My suggestion is that to undertake measures to accelerate investment in infrastructure, especially in digitalization. The digital transformation will have a direct impact on services and further boost the post-pandemic recovery. During the pandemic, apps-based online companies have been empowering many small and medium-scale enterprises, entrepreneurs, and e-commerce provided alternative channels for people to support their livelihood. Secondly, under the Rcep agreement, there is differential treatment for member countries to implement the Rcep commitments and also support in terms of development assistance and capacity building. Rcep could provide a framework for technical assistance and key sectors to increase the competitiveness of some relevant signatories. ASEAN also needs to further enhance its regional cooperation and promoting greater liberalization. We also need to create a more predictable economic environment, thus ensuring sustainable growth in the region. This would ultimately allow free flow movement of goods and services between Rcep members. Last but not least, I would like to inform you that ASEAN has launched a web portal with the tagline, "Your business information gateway to ASEAN and beyond." This portal will further facilitate business access to international market and take advantage of the ongoing process of economic integration. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for your comprehensive explanation about Rcep in the ASEAN point of view. And then I will continue to our second panelist. Allow me to introduce. He's Mr. Ramon Gascon Alonso, currently assumed as General Manager of the Spanish ASEAN Business Association, ASAMPEA. He also serves as a Chairman of the Spanish Chambers of Commerce in China, Vice Chairman of the European Chamber of Commerce in China, Board Member of the European Chamber of Commerce in the Republic of Korea, and Chairman of Turkish Chamber of Commerce in Spain. He has long-standing career in banking, such as a Managing Director of BBVA, when the bank expanded its business to China and Republic of Korea, and his last position in banking sector as the Head of International and Institutional Relations of Eurasia of BBVA. Nowadays, he devotes himself to teach graduate and undergraduate students in their approach to international business, and he's also an associate professor at Universidad Nebrija and EAE Business School. Mr. Gascon, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Is it okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning to you all, and thank you very much to the organizers for extending this invitation to myself regarding the topic, which is, I think, very interesting. Well, one of the problems of being almost the last one to talk is like many of the topics has been already discussed by the previous panelists. Well, I would like to focus on the topic, which is regional comprehensive economic and opportunities for Spain. So what should I underline? Well, underline that, well, this is going to be probably, if everything goes accordingly to the plans, the largest trade agreement in the world. So that's really important. And then we have to realize the importance of what have been signed recently. Why? Because the implications of the agreement is the reduction of the final elimination of all the custom tariffs over 90% of all goods traded among the countries. That's really huge. And it also implicates a reduction of or allowing to participate and invest in 65% of all the sectors among the countries for investors within the region and outside the region, basically in 3 fields: financial services, telecommunications, and professional services. And of course, moreover, to standardize all the rules of commerce, providing a legal framework stability to the region, which is pretty much appreciated. What should I say regarding the opportunities for the Spanish companies? Well, it has been already mentioned by the previous panelists, especially by Mr. Bonnet, and Spain still has a marginal position within the region. This is something like, no matter how many times we repeat, Spanish companies should also focus in different markets, especially markets with a huge potential of growth, like the ones integrating the Asean region and all the Rcep signatories. It's complicated. So I should say, like, first of all, we have to convince Spanish companies to look into the region more deeply. Okay, why? Because according to this agreement, if Spanish companies are not present there, they will have almost impossible to compete in the next years. So my first message regarding opportunities for the Spanish companies should say, like, they have to consider to establish in at least one of the countries and to look over the region from that hub or that representative office or whatever they decided to establish, because otherwise they will be missing losing very important opportunities. That should be my first advice. Second, well, I think the transitory period, which is over 20 years, really too long, 20 years time. Look what's going on in the world. We have news almost every single day, changing the environment. We are competing, or we are facing our interests. So let's say I should not anticipate an easy path for the countries to standardize and harmonize all the regulations, because they are pretty much different among them, and to come up with a standardized, it will take time and it will be probably difficult. And this is because 20 years has been given as the transition period. to standardize all the processes. Let's see what's going on in 20 years, but at least the base is there. And then one thing it wasn't mentioned by the previous speakers, but I would like to raise the point. It is, I miss India within the RCEP. Why? Well, India is the second largest country in terms of population. They enjoy a pretty much good industrial sector, and probably they didn't sign up in the first moment the agreement because they have the considerations regarding what is going to be the role of China and the Chinese companies in the next years within the region. As it was mentioned, if we have Chinese company operating in this within the region, they can benefit to modify or to relocate some chains of supply to a much cheaper countries, but at the end of the day, it will be Chinese companies benefiting Chinese market. So the Indians still feel that or consider that as a fear, as a threat, rather than an opportunity. I hope things will come up to a certain point of agreement and India will reconsider their position. And we are running out of time. So just to conclude my exposure, I should say, like, I should recommend Spanish companies to really look to the region as a good opportunity, probably the best opportunity they will have in the close future to grow. And that should be my recommendation. Thank you very much to you all.
Thank you, Mr. Gascon. Thank you for your elaborated insight about Rcep, different and challenges. And now, allow me also to introduce our last moderator, last but not the least. He's a Professor Miguel Otero Iglesias, currently serves as a senior analyst at Elcano Royal Institute and professor in international economy at the School of Global and Public Affairs at IE University. Over the past decade, he has been a visiting research fellow at the Institute of World Economics and Politics at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences in China and the Mercator Institute of China for China Studies in Germany. The important thing, he is also known as an author of the euro, the dollar, and the global financial crisis, currency challenges seen from emerging markets, published by Routledge in 2015, and also has wrote many academic papers published in various academic journals, such as a Review of International Political Economy, the World Economy, Journal of Common Market Studies, and New Political Economy. Professor Miguel, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Ambassador, and thanks to the organizers for convening us. It's really a pleasure to be here. And since I have 10 minutes, I'm going to be quite straightforward in tackling some of the issues. This agreement, of course, is of great significance for all what has been said. And as the previous speaker was saying as well, it's difficult now to bring new insights. But I think one of the main aspects that has not been highlighted enough is that this agreement has a conflict resolution mechanism. And this would be, one of the first times really that in the region you have a supranational conflict resolution mechanism that from a European perspective, this really, brings a level of integration that is much deeper than when you have intergovernmental agreements. We'll see whether this is functioning properly, how it's set up, whether all the players will accept it, the bigger and the smaller ones. But I think that's as well significant. I think it shows as well kind of the power of economics, right? That there is this urge, despite the geopolitical conflicts that we are seeing, that there is kind of this momentum to continue with the integration of the region, to bring in the big powers that you have, even China and Australia in the agreement, of course India is not in it, but who knows? At some point they might be in it, but it's significant that ASEAN has brought in Japan, Korea, and China into it with Australia. A few words as well on what it means for the WTO, right? I mean, this agreement as well show, I think, that we have more regional agreements rather than a global agreement, and that the reform of the WTO, that agreements at the WTO level are very difficult and will continue to be difficult in the near future, and therefore, that's the new scenario we are in. On the geopolitics, I think here, the role of China is of course key. I would highlight that if it comes to a moment where there will be kind of a decoupling, a disconnect between the United States and China, and we are unfortunately seeing more of that, then my view is that you will have to operate as a business in both ecosystems. You will have to produce and to gather for the American market, and even I would say for the Western market, because probably the United States and Europe will be together in there, and then somehow you will have to as well, if you want to operate in China, follow Chinese rules, standards, etc. And as Antonio Bonet was mentioning, since ASEAN and China have this agreement, you don't really need to be in China, so you don't need to expose yourself totally to being in the Chinese market, with the consequence that this might bring. Because you have the possibility to produce in ASEAN. You produce in ASEAN, you make the product, for the Chinese market. So you can be even like, the tendency is now with the dual circulation strategy of the Chinese government that you need to increasingly become a more Chinese company. And it's interesting that you can be somehow a Chinese company by being based in Thailand or Indonesia or other places in ASEAN. And I think that, and I would agree with Antonio here, that would make ASEAN a very interesting place to invest and to build your strategy for the region from there. Of course, ASEAN is very, very diverse. We have Singapore with a GDP per capita of 65,000 per year. And then you have places like Cambodia and Myanmar with 2,000. And I think for a business, entrepreneur, you need to realize, okay, and the ambassador was just mentioning this diversity that you have there, and some are more developed, some are less, but perhaps the ones that are less developed, they have, of course, more growth potential. And from what I could read, Vietnam and the Philippines are meant to be, the very, high growth potential countries in the near future. Of course, when we come now to Spain has a very minor, as was mentioned, by several speakers, presence in the region, a region that, has increased its GDP by 2 over the past 10 years and by 5 since 2000. So, it's a very high growth region, but unfortunately, Spanish businesses are less there than they should. Exports of Spain to the region in 2019 were 1.3% of Spanish exports there. So it's very low. We have to figure off 6%, but of course 6% is, including Australia, China. But if it comes to ASEAN, that, perhaps it's the most interesting place right now to be just 1.3%. And last year, because of the pandemic, it went even down to 1.1%, right? So 1% of all the exports of Spain go to ASEAN. This is much lower than Belgium, a much smaller economy, and an economy that doesn't really have, the colonial ties that other big countries have in Europe, like France or the UK or the Netherlands. I mean, Belgium doesn't really have. I mean, it's almost like Spain in that regard. So the first thing I think to say, on how to overcome these barriers or this lack of presence in ASEAN is somehow, ASEAN and is the most distant region in the world from a Spanish business perspective. Not only economically, because the numbers show that, but I would even claim mentally that there is kind of this cultural gap of not knowing each other. There's very little knowledge. Vice versa. From Spain to ASEAN and from ASEAN countries about what is Spain. So I think that's the one thing to mention. I think there's a lack of an institutional framework. The institutional connections, they are not there. In countries that, where the state plays a big role, and so these institutional connections to the government, to the public sector are very important, socially, culturally, economically, and that is lacking. Very few visits. In both directions, institutional visits, and I think there we need to increase, on that front. And as I said, I think there is the feeling that the region is dominated by the big geopolitical and economic powerhouses, the Germany's, the France, the UK, but I think Spain, I don't know why Spain should be on a lower level than the Netherlands or Italy or other economies that are important and are having much more presence there. So I think overall, great potential. I think it was mentioned, and again, great that we have convened this. Hopefully, we'll have more events of this sort, and I will try my best to convince Spanish policymakers and business people that ASEAN is the place to be for the foreseeable future. Thank you again for the invitation.
Thank you, Professor, for your very comprehensive explanations. And distinguished panelists, having listened to your comprehensive explanations, of course, will give us some idea to elaborate more. In this regard, allow me to open this discussion session. I will give floor to us or giving opinion or what have been explained by our panelists today. Due to time constraint for this session, we will hear probably 3 questions from participants. Is there any questions or? Oh? Okay, if not, allow me to ask Professor Ambassador. We do realize that in ASEAN, we have a different economic level among the members. So, Ambassador, what do you think that we should do to overcome this issue so that we can compete exactly with our partner in economic global?
Thank you, Mr. Moderator. As mentioned earlier, that in this trade pact, everybody should be winner, and then everybody should be participating in this agreement and play certain roles to attract investments. So in so doing, I think what we should do is, as for the member countries, to develop, to do some certain structural transformation, institutional framework, so that they can promote more business, the ease of doing business, to reduce the cost of doing business, and they also attract more investors. And the infrastructure also important for the foreign investment to come. So I hope in future, all countries will be prepared and reap the benefits of Rcep.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Maybe probably Mr. Gascon, do you have any opinion about this? Can you just suggest us as ASEAN country how to we overcome the differential level of economy of us?
Well, I think I think you have been running with the ASEAN community for a long time, so you ASEAN countries have pretty much they pretty know well each other, and then that will be a good starting point. I should say, they have a benchmark, which is the European Union. The European Union has been consolidating both political and economical ties. Probably for the future development of the region, they could have a look what in the European Union, the problems we face and how we overcome these problems in the past and how are we facing the future. Of course, it's not the same scenario. We European countries, it's a small, and we share borders, terrestrial borders, etc., which is a different case for the ASEAN countries. But at the end of the day, if we go through a unification or through a consolidation of a market union and that venture, I think the European Union could be a good benchmark for the ASEAN countries to take a look and to consider what we have been achieving in the past and which were our goals for the future. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Gascon. And I would like to also get some opinion insight from your professor.
Well, it's a very difficult question, because even in the European Union, you have big differences between, different countries. Perhaps one suggestion that I always put forward, and I think it's key, where can be a bit more triangulation there. I am strongly in favor of having young leaders meetings or young leaders kind of visits. I think that this has been done for a long time by Japan, the United States, and others. But I think bringing together 10 leaders, young leaders from each of the ASEAN countries, individually or just as a group, and and then 10 Spanish young leaders would be. I've been in several of those when I was still young, back in the in the days, and that's a way as well to know the country, to make the connections, networking, and that surely will help as well some countries to develop.
Thank you. Is there any questions? Oh, no? Okay.
If I may add
Please.
just one more, I
Yes,
think that
Razif.
Spain also should take advantage to position itself in the region, because Spain, I can see that it is strategically located in Europe. It has a geopolitical interest in Latin America, connectivity with North Africa, and also in Mediterranean. So Spain is actually can be a hub for export markets from ASEAN region. So if Spain take advantage of this Rcep and brings products to the region, and it can further play its role as a distributorship or as a hub, I think you should take advantage, because ASEAN or Rcep region should be a new market frontier for Spain, and in particular, and European countries as a whole. Thank you very much.
So it means that we need more Spanish companies presence in our region, Excellency.
Yes.
Once again, I thank you very much for your valuable explanations, dear panelists, that enlighten us about Rcep, and we wish you all the best for your life and career, and stay healthy for all of us. And also big appreciation to all participants for your active participation in this session. Let's give big round of applause for Mr. Akmal, Mr. Gascon, and Professor Miguel Otero, and all of us.
Thank you very much. And now we're going to finish this seminar with the representative from Qatar Airways Spain and the Embassy of Vietnam in Spain.
Hello, do you hear me? Good morning, everyone. First of all, I would like to thank you, my Madrid Chamber of Commerce, to give us the opportunity to be here together, and also to welcome the Excellencies, and thank you very much as well for your warm welcome. Also to all the participants on this meeting. My name is Marimar, I'm country manager of Qatar Airways, and I have next to me Pablo Lamas, which is the corporate sales manager. And we are very happy to be here. In fact, being the last give me the opportunity to congratulate all of everyone, all the people participating, all the panelists, and the people that presented the ASEAN region. Because I believe that there is a huge potential and opportunities as well of challenges. And I think that the distance that Antonio Bonet was commenting and some other people give us the opportunity to tell you that we can bring both regions closer. So this is also for us the message that besides the long distance in terms of kilometers on mileage between Asia and Spain, Qatar Airways is flying from Madrid and Barcelona, also from Malaga in summer as a seasonal flight, and we can bring closer everyone. I mean, those living in Asia. In fact, we are flying via Doha to most of the ASEAN region countries. And before the pandemic, we used to fly to 180 destinations. We started from Madrid in 2005. In 2010, we started from Barcelona. And before the COVID, we were flying 3 daily flights with wide body, 3 daily flights from Madrid and 3 daily flights from Barcelona. Now, currently, due to the COVID, We are operating 14 weekly flights from Madrid, which is 2 daily flights, not bad. And from Barcelona, 12 weekly flights. So overall, from Spain, we have 26 weekly flights from Spain to Asia. I mean, our connection at this moment, due to the travel restrictions, we are flying to Thailand. Bangkok and Phuket are the destinations that we are currently operating with 21 weekly flights. We fly also to Philippines, Manila, Clark, and Cebu with 26 weekly flights. Malaysia, we are flying to Kuala Lumpur with 10 weekly flights. And Indonesia, we are flying to Jakarta and Bali, 18 weekly flights, most of them to Jakarta, to a less extent to Bali, but due to the travel restrictions. And Vietnam, we are flying at this moment 8 weekly flights, Ho Chi Minh and Hanoi. Okay, the other destinations that are mentioned were destinations that we used to fly, but at this moment we are suspended. Looking forward to go back to the normality and looking forward to reinstate the destinations that we are still not flying and also to increase the frequencies. Okay, Qatar Airways, I mean, like the whole airline industry, I mean, we've been going through a huge challenge during this pandemic, but Qatar Airways has been leading the airline industry just by the way we manage the pandemic. It's very important to give you this message that strength and resilience have been two of the main attributes of the airline, because we have been able to manage the challenges and we have been focused. We never suspended the whole flights, the operations. We only reduced our network to 30 destinations. Now we are recovering and we are already flying to 140 destinations, but it's important to say that we have always been there, always supporting repatriations and supporting any type of essential trips that had to be done. And also very important, our commitment to the customers, to the corporations, to the companies, to the passengers, to everyone, every single passenger, providing healthy measures and safety measures on board of our aircrafts and in the airport, in our hub. So thanks to this strength, resilience, and commitment, we have been named Airline of the Year 2021, and now we will see a video that is showing our excellencies. On the next slide, yeah.
We've been awarded the world's best airline of 2021, but it's more than an award for being the only global airline to continue through the pandemic, and for all the hours of hard work we dedicated to making your experience exceptional, and flying the youngest, greenest fleet in the sky. More than an award, it's a responsibility to continue to provide the very best for each and every one of our customers. Qatar Airways, you can rely on us.
So this is an image sometimes says more than the words, no? So the last slide I'm going to show now, it's important because, as I said before, our commitment to the customers and to the companies in particular, because the only travel that was allowed during all this pandemic were the essential trips. And there were lots of companies with lots of contracts that had to continue traveling. So we, from the very beginning, we understood the uncertain times that we were going through, and we implemented a very flexible policy, which allow, and it still is valid. I mean, we have extended this policy until 31st of May 2022, in which we allow unlimited change of dates within the validity of the ticket. We allow refund of the tickets without any penalty. So imagine someone needs to plan a trip, needs to go, but then the day before they say, oh, maybe the country is closing, there is restriction, you cannot travel, or whatever other reason. So you can refund the ticket without any justification. It's because it's within our flexible policy. And also the possibility, if you have the ticket, to keep it for 2 years. Normally the tickets are valid for 1 year, but we allow it for 2 years. So this is something that has really been very, very appreciated, has really given a lot of confidence to our customers and companies. And yeah, I mean, we are proud for it. We are proud to be here and to extend all our commitment and our support to you, to the companies that you represent in your countries, also to the Spanish companies, and to bring everyone together. And well, after the presentation, you can interact as well with Pablo, because we have lots of other things that we can discuss in regard to our special agreements for corporations and so on. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marimar. Thank you to Qatar Airways, strategic collaborators, for the Madrid Chamber of Commerce and International Department. Well, and now for the closing remarks, let me introduce you His Excellency, Mr. Juan Xuanhai, Ambassador of Vietnam to Spain. Thank you very much, Ambassador, for attending this event.
Thank you. Excellencies, can you hear me? Excellencies, distinguished guests, participants, ladies and gentlemen, with more than 2 hours of our seminar title, Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, Opportunities for Spain, running through 3 sections. Now we have reached the end of our seminar. With that time, I hope that you have a better understanding about the Rcep. To remind all of you, I would like to underline 3 notes below. Firstly, the Rcep, between the 10 member ASEAN countries and 5 of its major trade partners, Australia, China, Japan, Republic of Korea, and New Zealand, mark ASEAN biggest free trade pact today, covering almost 30% of the world population and also 30% of the world's GDP. So the new trade bloc is bigger than both the US, Mexico, Canada agreement, and even the European Union. Secondly, the Rcep agreement underpins ASEAN's role in leading a multilateral trade agreement of this magnitude, despite global and regional challenges and the idea of negotiations. Rcep will give much needed boost for a swift, robust recovery for businesses and people in our region, particularly during the current COVID-19 pandemic crisis. The deal will improve market access with tariff and quota eliminated in 90%, as mentioned by our speaker, of good trade, and make business predictable with common rule of origins and transparent regulations upon entry into force. This will encourage firms to invest more in the region, including building supply chains and services, and to generate jobs. Thirdly, the Rcep is offering so large markets with many favorable conditions and incentives for Spanish business sectors, especially the investor, to come to our region to invest. Distinguished guests and participants, ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the organizing committee, I would like to express my appreciations to the speaker, panelists, and moderators for their valuable contribution, making our seminar today a success event. We appreciate your information, your time, and service given to this event. We also would like to express our sincere gratitude for the valuable support, assistance, and close cooperation from the Chamber of Commerce, Industry, and Service of Madrid. Without this help, we are unable to organize this seminar. We are also grateful to all participants for taking your time of your busy duties to attend the seminar. Your attendance helps our event a success. We hope you enjoy the seminar and get what you have wished for. It's a great experience to cooperate with all of you during this event. We are confident that after this seminar, the Spanish business sector will be encouraged and have more motivation and bigger interest to come to our region to find our business and investment opportunities. As so far I know, Spanish business sector pay much attention to the traditional market of Latin America and Africa, as mentioned by our Ambassador Akmal, the Ambassador of Malaysia, just mentioned a few minutes ago. So I think it is time for the Spanish sector to expand your business to our region. We are sure that the Rcep will help your business more fruitful with higher profits in the year to come. Before ending my closing remark, I would like to convey a special thanks to Her Excellency Fantifa Yamsuda Ekarohit, Ambassador of Thailand, the current chair of ASEAN Committee in Madrid, her staff and all officials in the working group of ASEAN, and together with officials from Madrid Chamber of Commerce for their valuable effort and priceless contribution for the success of our seminar. In that spirit, I would like to close my remark and officially announce the end of our seminar. Wishing you all the good health, happiness, and success. Thank you for your extension.
Thank you very much. In the name of the Madrid Chamber of Commerce, special thanks to the Asian Committee in Madrid, special thanks to all the embassies represented here today and the rest of the panelists. For all the participants, let me tell you that we will send all the presentations, and if you have any question, please don't hesitate to contact with the Madrid Chamber of Commerce. Thank you so much.